5 minutes later, I would have been pronounced dead. That sentence still doesn't feel real when I say it out loud. But that's exactly what the doctor told me after I woke up. 5 minutes. That was all that separated me from not being here anymore. What scares me the most isn't how close I came to dying. It's how normal everything felt before it happened. There was no dramatic warning. No loud alarm. No voice in my head screaming danger. Just an ordinary day, quietly turning into the last day of my life. If you're listening to this right now, I want you to understand something. This could happen to anyone. I didn't think I was fragile. I didn't think my body was failing me. I didn't think tonight would matter. But sometimes, life doesn't collapse loudly. Sometimes, it slips away in silence. That night, I wasn't crying. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't even scared at first. I was just tired. The kind of tired that sinks deep into your bones. The kind you brush off and say, I just need rest. Looking back now, I wish I had listened more closely to my body. Because it was trying to warn me, softly. Before that night, my life wasn't extraordinary. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I had routines, plans, small dreams I assumed I had time to reach. I believed tomorrow was guaranteed. Most of us do. We make plans without realizing how fragile the promise of later really is. That evening, I went through my usual motions. I ate. I talked. I laughed. Nothing felt wrong enough to stop me. And that's the part that still chills me to my core. Pause. Because when danger finally arrived, it didn't kick down the door. It whispered. At first, it was just discomfort. A strange heaviness in my chest. A feeling I couldn't quite explain. I told myself I was overthinking. I didn't want to be dramatic. I didn't want to worry anyone. So I stayed quiet. I ignored the voice inside me that said, something isn't right. That decision, that single moment of dismissal, almost cost me my life. There's a moment before everything falls apart where time feels normal. That's the moment I wish I could go back to. Because once your body starts shutting down, there are no second chances. Only consequences. As the night went on, my breathing changed. Not enough to panic. Just enough to notice. My heart felt like it was working harder than it should. Like it was struggling to keep up. Still, I convinced myself I was fine. I didn't know my body was already fighting to keep me alive. What happened next didn't feel real. It felt like the world slowly stepping away from me. Sounds faded. My vision blurred at the edges. My limbs felt heavy, like they weren't fully mine anymore. That was the moment fear finally arrived. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a quiet, terrifying realization. Something is very wrong. And before I could fully understand what was happening, my body gave up. That was the last clear moment I remember. Before everything went dark. The darkness didn't come all at once. It crept in. Like a dimmer switch slowly being turned down on my life. I remember trying to hold on to consciousness. Trying to fight whatever was pulling me under. But my body wasn't listening to me anymore. That's the scariest feeling I've ever known. Realizing your mind is awake, but your body has decided it's done. At some point, I must have fallen. I don't remember hitting the floor. I remember the cold. The kind of cold that seeps into you, even when you're indoors. Later, I was told my skin had gone pale. My lips were turning blue. But in that moment, I didn't know any of that. All I knew was that I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even scream for help. This is where I need to tell you who I am. My name is Sarah Anderson. And the night my body gave up on me, I wasn't alone in that house. My husband, Daniel Anderson, was there. Just a few rooms away. That fact still hurts the most. Help was close. But I couldn't reach it. I could hear sounds, faintly. Footsteps. A voice. Movement. I tried to respond. Nothing happened. It was like being trapped inside myself. Imagine screaming at the top of your lungs. And no sound comes out. That was me. Time stopped making sense. Seconds stretched into something unrecognizable. I don't know how long I lay there. Minutes. Longer. All I know is that my breathing became shallow, short, uneven. Each breath felt like work. Like my body was arguing with itself about whether to continue. And then something terrifying happened. The fear disappeared. Not because things got better, but because my body was shutting down. There's a calm that comes when you're close to dying. People don't talk about that part. It's not peaceful. It's surrender. I remember thinking, not in words, but in feeling. This is it. No panic. No fight. Just acceptance. Meanwhile, Daniel noticed something was wrong. He called my name. Once. Twice. No answer. He came closer. And when he saw me on the floor, everything changed. I was told later that my eyes were open, but I wasn't seeing anything. That my chest barely moved. That for a moment, he thought I was already gone. Panic entered the room fast. Shaking. Calling my name louder. Trying to wake me. Still nothing. That's when he called for help. Hands shaking. Voice breaking. I wish I could tell you I felt comfort knowing he was there. But I didn't feel anything anymore. I was drifting somewhere I wasn't meant to stay. There's a strange space between life and death. It's not darkness. It's not light. It's absence. I felt weightless. Disconnected. Like the world had let go of me. And for a brief moment, I let go too. Sirens came later. Bright lights. Cold hands. Urgent voices. I didn't hear them. I didn't feel them. I was already too far away. Someone said something that would later haunt me. She's barely holding on. Another voice answered. We're losing her. 5 minutes. That's how close I was. 5 minutes from being pronounced dead. And the next thing that happened is the reason I'm here telling you this story. There's a moment right before everything goes quiet. When your body makes a final decision. I didn't know it at the time. But that moment had arrived for me. My breathing became so shallow that it barely counted as breathing anymore. Each breath felt delayed. Like my lungs were forgetting what they were supposed to do. And somewhere between one breath and the next, everything stopped. Later, I was told my heart rhythm became dangerously weak. Not gone. Just fading. Like a candle struggling to stay lit in a drafty room. That's when the room filled with urgency. Voices overlapping. Commands being shouted. Hands moving quickly over my body. Stay with us. Come on, breathe. Don't go. Those words were said to me. But I wasn't there to hear them. I need you to stay with me for this next part. Because what happened next still doesn't feel possible. And it explains why I believe I wasn't meant to die that night. But before I continue, if you've made it this far into my story, please do something small for me. Subscribe to this channel. Not because it's a rule, but because stories like this take courage to tell. And if you stay until the end of this video, you'll understand why I almost didn't survive. And what saved me when everything else failed. Now listen closely. As my body lay unresponsive, someone checked for a reaction. There was none. No response to sound. No response to touch. My body was there. But I wasn't. That's when a decision had to be made. Quickly. I was placed on a stretcher. Cold straps across my body. Bright lights overhead. The world rushed past me as they moved fast down a hallway. I didn't feel the movement. I didn't feel the fear. I was suspended in something that felt like nothing. People assume that when you're close to death, You see flashes of your life. I didn't. There were no memories. No visions. Just a deep, heavy stillness. And then, something changed. I felt pressure. Strong. Rhythmic. Someone was fighting for my life. My chest burned. My body reacted, faintly, against my will. A sound broke through the silence. Wait, I think she's responding. That single sentence shifted everything. They didn't stop. They kept working. Kept pushing. Kept calling me back. And slowly, painfully, my body began to answer. But I wasn't safe yet. Not even close. Because what nearly killed me hadn't been identified. And without knowing why my body shut down, it could happen again. At any moment. The next few minutes would decide everything. Whether I lived. Or whether this story ended right there. And what happened next changed the way I see life forever. The first thing I noticed when I came back was the sound. A steady, mechanical beeping. Slow. Persistent. At first, I thought it was part of a dream. Then the pain arrived. Not all at once. But in waves. My chest felt heavy, like something had been pressing on it for too long. My throat burned. My body felt unfamiliar. Like I'd been gone longer than I realized. I tried to open my eyes. They wouldn't respond immediately. When they finally did, the light was too bright. White walls. White sheets. White faces moving around me. I wasn't home. I was in a hospital. I tried to speak. No sound came out. Panic rushed in. I thought something else had gone wrong. Then I felt a hand in mine. Warm. Trembling. Daniel. He was crying. I'd never seen him cry like that before. Not quietly. Not controlled. This was fear spilling out of him in real time. A doctor stepped closer. Serious face. Measured voice. They said my name slowly, like they weren't sure I could hear. And then came the words that still echo in my mind. You're very lucky. Lucky. That word felt strange. Because luck didn't explain the terror I felt. It didn't explain how close I'd come to never waking up. They told us what they knew. Not what caused it. But what had happened. My body had gone into a critical state. My oxygen levels dropped dangerously low. My heart struggled to keep rhythm. At one point, they weren't sure I'd make it through the night. They ran tests. So many tests. Blood drawn. Monitors adjusted. Voices whispering just outside the curtain. Every time a doctor walked in, my heart raced. Every time they left without answers, fear settled deeper. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to machines breathe for me, wondering if my body would betray me again. I was afraid to sleep. What if I didn't wake up this time? That thought followed me like a shadow. Daniel barely left my side. He sat there, watching the monitors like they held my fate. At one point, he leaned close and whispered, "I thought I lost you." Those words broke something in me. Because I almost let that happen. By ignoring the signs. Hours passed. Maybe longer. Time moved strangely in that room. Every minute felt borrowed. And then the doctor returned. This time. Their expression was different. Serious. Careful. They said there were still unanswered questions. They didn't fully understand why my body shut down. And until they did, I wasn't safe. That was the moment the fear truly settled in. Surviving the night didn't mean I was out of danger. It just meant the fight wasn't over yet. They kept me in that hospital bed longer than I expected. At first I thought, okay, I survived. I'll rest, then I'll go home. I had no idea how wrong I was. Because surviving the moment didn't mean the danger had passed. Doctors came in and out. Different faces. Different voices. Same serious expressions. Each one asked me the same questions. Do you remember feeling dizzy? Any chest pain before this? Have you experienced this before? I answered the best I could. But most of my answers sounded like this. I'm not sure. I didn't think it was serious. I thought I was just tired. Soft laugh. Turns out, just tired almost killed me. One doctor sat down instead of standing. That's how I knew something was different. Doctors don't sit unless they have something important to say. He looked at me for a long moment before speaking. And then he said, "We're still trying to understand what caused your body to shut down like that." That sentence hit harder than I expected. Because I needed answers. I needed something clear. Something solid. Not, "We're still trying." They mentioned possibilities. Words I didn't like. Words that hung in the air long after they left the room. Heart-related issues. Oxygen deprivation. Stress-induced collapse. Each option sounded scarier than the last. I remember looking at Daniel and trying to smile. Trying to lighten the mood. I said, "Well, at least I got a dramatic story out of it." Soft laugh. He didn't laugh. That's when I realized how close this really was. Later that night, when the room was quiet and the lights were dim, I tried to joke with myself. I looked at all the wires attached to me and thought, so this is what it takes to get people to stop ignoring their body. Small laugh. But even as I laughed, fear sat heavy in my chest. Because every beep from the machine reminded me. My life was being monitored. Measured. Watched. Sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, my heart raced. What if it happened again? What if this time, nobody noticed fast enough? I opened my eyes quickly and let out a shaky breath. Soft, nervous laugh. I remember thinking, wow. I used to complain about insomnia. Now I'm scared of sleeping. At one point, a nurse came in to check on me. She smiled gently and said, "You're doing better than you think." I wanted to believe her. I really did. So I smiled back and said, "I guess I'm tougher than I look." She squeezed my hand and replied, "You'd be surprised how strong you are." That stayed with me. But strength doesn't erase fear. As the night dragged on, I realized something important. Almost dying doesn't make you brave. It makes you careful. It makes you aware. It makes you realize how quickly everything can change. Lying there, surrounded by machines, I made a quiet promise to myself. If I made it out of that hospital, I would stop ignoring my body. I would stop brushing off warning signs. I would stop assuming I had unlimited time. Because clearly, I don't. And just when I thought the worst part was over, another doctor walked in. This time with test results. And the look on their face told me something I wasn't ready to hear. What they said next made my heart drop all over again. The doctor didn't rush. That scared me more than bad news would have. He pulled up a chair, took a deep breath, and looked at me like I was about to hear the truth I wasn't ready for. "Your tests," he began slowly, "show that your heart nearly failed." My stomach dropped. My mind scrambled. Nearly failed? What does that even mean? I blinked, trying to focus, trying to remember anything about heart attacks, collapses, oxygen. But all I could hear was the beep of the monitor, steady and mocking. "You experienced a cardiac arrest," the doctor continued. I couldn't believe the words. They sounded foreign, almost like someone else's story. I remember thinking, wait, that almost didn't happen to me? I was really that close. The doctor went on, explaining the technical stuff, heart rhythm, oxygen levels, warning signs I'd missed. It was overwhelming. I nodded sometimes, said, aha, other times. But mostly, I just listened, terrified. He paused, looked at me, and said something that sank deeper than anything before. "You were minutes away from not making it. If you'd been alone." My throat tightened. My chest ached. I wanted to cry, but words wouldn't come. Daniel squeezed my hand. I looked at him. He looked scared too. But there was also relief. Relief I barely allowed myself to feel. I remembered the weeks before, the exhaustion, the ignored warning signs, the constant, "I'll deal with it tomorrow." How foolish I'd been. How close I'd come to leaving everyone behind. Almost dying. Almost leaving everything unfinished. Almost never seeing the next sunrise. The nurse returned, checking my vitals again, smiling as if that could erase the terror. "You're lucky," she said gently. And I realized she was right. Lucky. Lucky to have survived. Lucky to be here. Lucky to have a chance to change. That night, alone in my hospital room, I made a vow I never forgot. I will listen to my body. I will respect my limits. I will never ignore the warning signs again. And yet, even as I promised myself change, a part of me was terrified. Terrified that life could still throw me into the deep end, that fate could test me again, that survival wasn't guaranteed. I lay back, heart pounding, staring at the ceiling. I thought of everything I'd taken for granted. Every missed heartbeat of life I hadn't appreciated. And I realized, survival isn't just about living through an event. Survival is about seeing it, feeling it, and letting it transform you. And I needed to be transformed. But deep down, I also knew, this wasn't the end. Not yet. Another day, another fight. Another chance to prove I wasn't just lucky, that I was determined. And with that thought, I closed my eyes, trying to rest, trying to let the fear wash over me, but knowing deep down that life had only just begun to test me. Morning came slowly. The sunlight spilling through the blinds felt almost cruel. I had survived, but everything inside me screamed that life had changed. Permanently. Nurses came in, checked my vitals, adjusted medications, and reminded me of things I'd never thought I'd need to hear. "Take it easy," they said. "Listen to your body." I thought, easier said than done. Daniel stayed by my side. His presence was comforting, but I could see the worry etched across his face. He didn't need to say anything. His eyes said it all. This scared me. We were this close. The doctor returned, this time with a slightly firmer tone. "Recovery is going to take time," he explained. "You'll need rest, follow-ups, and careful monitoring. Your body will remind you it's still fragile." I nodded. I wanted to understand. I wanted to memorize every warning, every instruction. But fear and relief tangled together inside me like a storm I couldn't control. For the first time in a long while, I reflected deeply on my life. Every skipped doctor visit, every ignored fatigue, every time I brushed aside a warning sign, they could have been my last moments. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine the alternative. What if I hadn't made it? The thought hit like a punch. Every breath I had been taking felt like a gift I had almost lost. Daniel squeezed my hand again. "You're going to get through this," he said softly. And I wanted to believe him. I really did. But inside, a quiet panic lingered. What if something else goes wrong? Over the next few days, hospital life became a strange routine. Pills in tiny cups. Machines monitoring every heartbeat. Nurses reminding me to move, breathe, rest. And every time I tried to nap, every time I closed my eyes, I remembered the moment my body had betrayed me. Insomnia had returned, not because I couldn't sleep, but because I was terrified of what might happen while I did. Slowly though, I began to notice small victories. My heartbeat steadied. My energy returned in tiny bursts. I could walk to the bathroom without fear. I could smile without immediately thinking of the worst. I journaled every night, trying to make sense of my near-death experience. I wrote about fear. I wrote about gratitude. I wrote about mistakes I wouldn't repeat. One night, as the hospital grew quiet and the machines beeped softly, I realized something. Surviving wasn't enough. I had to truly live. And that meant changing. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Now. I promised myself I would. Listen to my body. Stop ignoring warning signs. Value every heartbeat. Love life more fiercely than fear. And as I drifted into uneasy sleep, I knew the next chapter of my life would be defined not by how close I came to death, but by how I chose to live after it. But even as hope crept in, I couldn't shake the feeling that survival was just the beginning. That something else was waiting for me outside these hospital walls. Something I wasn't ready for. Coming home should have felt like freedom. The door opened, familiar smells of my house hit me, and instead of comfort, I felt a strange mix of relief and fear. Every corner, every shadow, seemed amplified. I noticed things I'd ignored before. The ticking clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the sunlight through the window. Life had always been background noise. Now, it demanded my attention. Daniel helped me in, carrying the bags. I smiled, trying to hide the tremor in my hands. "I'm fine," I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were lies. My body still felt fragile. Every heartbeat reminded me of what had almost been lost. Sitting on the couch, I ran my hands over the cushions. Every touch grounded me in reality. I survived. I'm here. But surviving didn't mean life was back to normal. Simple things were now terrifying. Climbing stairs, carrying groceries, even sleeping alone. I was hyper-aware. Every sensation screamed, "Pay attention. Don't ignore me." Friends and family visited. Their smiles were warm, their voices comforting, but I struggled to respond fully. How could I explain the feeling of waking up to a heartbeat that almost stopped? How could I describe the weight of realizing every moment is borrowed? Instead, I watched. I listened. I absorbed. And I felt gratitude like I never had before. Gratitude for life. Gratitude for people who stayed. Gratitude for the chance to do better. I began noticing little miracles. A bird singing outside my window, the smell of fresh bread, the way sunlight hit the floor in the morning. Things I'd taken for granted before now felt sacred. Yet, the fear never fully left. At night, when the house went quiet, I'd lie awake, heart racing, imagining the worst. What if it happens again? What if next time, I don't wake up? I learned to live with that fear, not letting it control me but letting it teach me. I started small, walking carefully, eating properly, sleeping when I needed to. Each small act became a declaration. I respect my body. I respect my life. And slowly something else emerged. Strength. Not the kind you see in movies. Not the kind you show off. Real strength. The quiet, unwavering kind that grows when you look fear in the eye and keep moving forward anyway. Every morning became a challenge and a gift. Every heartbeat a reminder. I survived. I'm here. I can choose how to live. I began sharing my story, quietly at first, with friends and family. Not for attention. Not for pity. But because I realized my experience could matter. Maybe someone else would hear it and finally take care of themselves. Maybe someone else would realize that ignoring your body isn't bravery, it's risk. And so, life after the hospital became my mission. Not just to live, but to live fully. To appreciate small moments. To embrace every laugh, every tear, every heartbeat. I still have fear. I still have moments of doubt. But now, they remind me to live consciously. To pay attention. To cherish what most people take for granted. And deep down, I know this. Surviving is only the beginning. The real story is what comes after. The way you live when you've seen how close you came to losing it all. I never thought a heartbeat could feel so heavy. I never thought I'd fear something I couldn't see, couldn't fight, couldn't control. And yet, here I was, lying awake in the quiet of my room, every memory of the hospital flashing through my mind. I kept thinking about the moment it all happened. How my body betrayed me, how close I had come to nothing. And I hated myself for not listening sooner. Every warning I ignored, every skipped checkup, every time I said, "I'm fine," felt like a betrayal, to myself, to Daniel, to everyone who loved me. Tears came unbidden. I didn't stop them. I let them fall. Because for the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel everything at once. Fear, regret, grief, and amazement that I had survived. I remembered the beeping machines, the sharp voices of doctors, the coldness of hospital walls. I remembered the silence that followed the emergency, the way time slowed, how every second stretched into eternity. And I remembered the realization that life can end without warning. Soft, reflective laugh. I thought about all the little things I'd taken for granted. Breathing without thinking, walking without pain, laughing without fear. And now, each of these things felt sacred. Almost holy. Fragile. Temporary. I thought about Daniel. The way he never left my side, the way he held my hand when I trembled, the way his eyes mirrored my own terror. I realized then that love isn't just in smiles or words. It's in presence. In staying. In holding on when everything feels like it might break. And I thought about my body, how it had warned me, how I had ignored it. How nearly dying had humbled me, had ripped away illusions I didn't even know I had. I promised myself I would never take it for granted again. But even in this clarity, fear lingered. Fear of relapse. Fear of weakness. Fear of leaving everything unfinished. And it hit me, survival is not a single moment. Survival is every heartbeat, every choice, every decision to keep moving forward. I wept harder that night than I ever had. I wept for the fear I had ignored. I wept for the love I had sometimes taken for granted. I wept for the life I had almost lost. And then, slowly, a quiet strength began to rise inside me. A fire that whispered, "You are still here. You can still choose. You can still live fully." I realized the truth that no one tells you. Almost dying doesn't just make you appreciate life. It forces you to redefine it. To strip away distractions, excuses, fears, regrets. To embrace what truly matters. I closed my eyes, letting the tears dry on my cheeks. And in the quiet, I made another vow, this one louder, fiercer, unbreakable. I will live like every heartbeat matters. I will not waste a single day. I will be brave, not because danger has passed, but because I have learned what it means to face it. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if my body would betray me again. But I did know this. I had survived the worst. And now, the rest of life, was mine to fight for. And as I finally drifted into sleep, exhausted, humbled, and grateful, I realized, sometimes the most terrifying moments become the most profound teachers. And sometimes, they give you the courage to truly live. I opened my eyes that morning, and the sunlight felt different. It wasn't just bright, it was demanding. Telling me, "You're still here. You have work to do. Life hasn't given you permission to waste this chance." Daniel was there, of course, coffee in hand, smiling softly. I smiled back, but this time, there was something different in my expression. Something raw, something aware. Something that had been forged in the fire of fear. I had survived, yes. But surviving had changed me. Every heartbeat, every breath, every simple step felt heavier, and yet lighter at the same time. Heavy with meaning. Light with possibility. I went about my day slowly, deliberately. Each motion, each choice, each conversation became conscious. I noticed things I'd never noticed before. The texture of my clothes, the warmth of sunlight on my skin, the laugh of someone I loved. Every small detail was a miracle. I realized that life isn't just about big moments. It's about noticing the small ones. About appreciating them. About allowing yourself to feel. Because that's where survival turns into living. I started calling my family more often. I hugged Daniel tighter. I told my friends I loved them. And I forgave myself, for ignoring warning signs, for rushing through life, for taking my body for granted. But it wasn't easy. Some days, fear still crept in. A flutter in my chest, a wave of exhaustion, a moment of doubt. And every time, I reminded myself, Fear isn't weakness. Fear is awareness. Fear is the teacher you didn't know you needed. I also realized something else. Strength isn't about never being scared. Strength is about showing up even when you are scared. Strength is about choosing life again. Every single day. Weeks passed. Slowly, I regained my routines, but I never forgot. Every heartbeat became a reminder. Every breath became a promise. I started journaling more, reflecting more, listening to my body more, and living intentionally. And then one morning, as I sipped my coffee and watched the sunlight dance across the floor, I felt it, the shift. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was awake. Fully awake. Every part of me, heart, mind and soul, alive in a way I had never been before. I thought back to the hospital room, the machines, the doctors, the fear. And I realized something profound. I had been given a gift most people take for granted. Life. Pure, fragile, unstoppable life. And with that realization came clarity. I wouldn't waste it. I wouldn't rush it. I wouldn't ignore it. I started sharing my story, not to frighten, but to awaken. To remind others that ignoring warning signs, brushing off pain, or assuming we have unlimited time, can cost us everything. To tell them, your life is precious. Don't wait for a near-death moment to understand that. I realized the power of words, the power of reflection, the power of choice. I realized that even after the darkest moments, even after fear has gripped you tight, you can emerge stronger, wiser, and more aware. Life isn't perfect. Life doesn't promise safety. Life doesn't guarantee tomorrow. But life is incredible. And surviving it is only the first step. I stepped outside that morning, breathed deeply, and smiled. The world looked the same. The sun rose in the same sky. The air carried the same familiar smells. But I had changed. I was alive, awake, and forever altered. And deep down, I knew this. Whatever comes next, I will meet it fully present. I will live deliberately, love fiercely, and cherish every heartbeat as if it were my last. Because I shouldn't have been alive to tell this story. But I am. And that changes everything. And that's my story, how I shouldn't have been alive. But here I am, sharing it with you. If this story resonated with you, if it made you pause and think about your own life, please, leave a comment and let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your reflections, or even your own experiences. And if you want to hear more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thank you so much for listening, for taking these moments with me, and for letting my story remind you to live fully, consciously, and gratefully.